let's come back to the issue of communication. Communication is transfer of information, right? Now, there are two broadly different kinds of communication in a organization. There is formal communication and informal communication. Let's take a look at formal communication. Now, formal communication could be top-down, which is in the form of instructions, or in the form of delegation, where the boss tells the subordinate that get this job done, and if you need any help on this, you can refer to this particular person, right? He delegates the job to a subordinate. So that's top-down formal communication. Then you have bottom-up formal communication, where the subordinate reports to the boss, right, and lets him know that the job has been done, or he lets him know what are the problems that he is facing, right? So the employee is ultimately accountable for his job. So bottom-up information is concerned with reporting and accountability. And then you have horizontal kind of formal communication. Horizontal communication is between departments, for instance, right? The manager of the market research department and the manager of the product development department share information. The market research manager understands what the customer wants. He passes this data on to the product development team who design the product. If there are certain difficulties the design team faces, they may come back to the manager of the market research team. So it's a to and fro passage of information. That's horizontal information. So these are three kinds of formal communication. We talked about manager of the market research department, that's manager A, and the manager of the product development department, which is manager B. They communicate amongst themselves. Now, let's say that one of the staff 1 in the market research department has an issue with a particular aspect of the product design. Now, would he directly approach manager B? He would not. He would approach his manager A, who in turn would approach manager B, right? So this is a question of proper communication through proper channels. So that's important in the case of formal communication. This is the formal communication network. The problem with the formal communication network is that apart from this formal situation, people, employees from various departments also meet informally. For instance, they would meet at the coffee dispensing machine and share a cup of coffee. So during that time, they are talking, and this is grapevine. This is what is called the grapevine system of transfer of information. What happens here is that rumors, incomplete information, speculation, these kinds of things take place through the grapevine network. It's much better for the company to formalize networking, right? So this is a paradox of sorts. We are talking about formalizing informal communication through creating networks. You permit employees of different levels in belonging to different departments to get together in networks in different occasions and share information. What happens here is that this is a kind of an official grapevine that is being established. Here, because the practice is a officially recognized and encouraged practice, it would lead to less rumors, right? Less speculation. Everything that happens in networking would tend to be based on more authoritative, more concrete information. We've looked at different kinds of communication, formal and informal. Now, this would be downward, that's one kind of communication, and upward, which is another kind of communication, as we saw earlier, and horizontal. Now, downward communication is part of the management function, right? And what are the kinds of downward communication? There's the organization manual, for instance, right? Then there is oral communication, where the boss talks to his subordinate or talks to a group of subordinates. And then there is written communication, where memos are sent across from a boss to his subordinate. What is the purpose of downward communication? One, it's definitely to give instructions. This is perhaps the most routine of the functions of downward communication. A much more important element of downward communication is building culture within the company. The company's culture is something which a superior would be more exposed to than a subordinate. And it is the duty of the superior to build this culture in the subordinate. That is the only way the culture can spread in the organization. This can only be done through downward communication, communication from the superior to the subordinate. So building culture is a very important element of communication. Then there is the question of providing encouragement. Right? Now, every employee requires encouragement, because the employee in the course of his work has faced several obstacles. He has managed to overcome those obstacles. He requires acknowledgement for this. He requires praise for this, right? So, encouragement is very, very critical. It's a very critical element of downward communication. You need to give praise to the employee, right? You need to praise a person for a good job. That will ensure that he will attempt to do a similar thing again. Finally, there is the question of constructive criticism. See, after all, no employee is going to always perform his function the way the superior expects it. There will be occasions when the employee will falter. This may be for different reasons. It may be because of obstacles that he faces, external obstacles, obstacles in the environment, or it may be because of some internal deficiencies in the employee, right? Now, this can only be handled through the process of constructive criticism, right? Constructive criticism is very different from calling names, right? Now, calling names will ultimately demotivate the employee. On the other hand, constructive criticism, where the superior asks the employee, why, what happened, what was the problem, let us see how we can solve that problem in the future, that is the kind of approach that is required in this case of feedback and constructive criticism.